Hi everybody and welcome to the Online Ocean Symposium. In this hangout we'll be highlighting the upcoming San Francisco International Ocean Film Festival. That amazing annual 4-day festival is start to set in a matter of weeks in the city by the bay, San Francisco. We are joined in this hangout today by filmmakers to discuss the topic of conservation in the medium of movies. Before we get started, I want to remind you people at home that you can ask us, anybody on the panel, any question that comes to mind through the Google Hangout tool. Just, hit us up. We're already a little bit behind, so let's dive right in. First of all, I want to welcome back to the symposium director of the San Francisco International Ocean Film Festival, Ana Blanco. Welcome back.
Thank you, Andrew. Pleasure to be here.
Again, pleasure to have you back. I gotta ask, the festival has a new home this year. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what's expected at the festival?
Yeah, we're very excited about it. We will be at Cowell Theater this year, which is at the Fort Mason Center in San Francisco. It's along the waterfront, and it's where the festival started in 2004. We were there for about 5 or 6 years, and then we moved to the Aquarium of the Bay. And now we're back. So we're back where we began. It's a new renovated facility and has about 400 seats. And it's a beautiful location, so we're very excited to have some new digs.
That's fantastic. This is actually the 12th annual festival. How has it evolved over the years? What's new about it this year? Are you excited about doing this for the umpteenth year?
Yeah, this is my 5th time doing it, and we started in 2004. We started at the Dolphin Club, which is a swim and rowing club here in San Francisco, legendary. And we started out as a all-volunteer organization, and over the last 11 years, it's grown in the number of people who attend. We're now up to about 4,000 people on 5 days. We have 11 programs of films. We have 2 panel discussions, and 2 of the really exciting parts of the festival that have evolved over the years. One is the 8th annual student education program, which enables about 1,200 middle school and high school students to come for free. And we also have our 4th annual student film competition. So those are 2 really exciting components to the festival that have evolved over the years, and we're very excited about both of those.
Well, those are some really great highlights, and some of those I can definitely see as being must-see events as part of this fantastic festival. How can folks at home or folks in San Francisco get involved with this festival?
Right now, everything is on the website, so it's our website is oceanfilmfest.org. And the full lineup of films is listed. It's an easy way for people to go online to see trailers of the films, to learn about the panel discussions, to buy tickets. We are a volunteer-driven organization, so there's plenty of room for people to volunteer. We have about 100 slots, and there's still some openings. So right on the home page, there's this big blue button that says Festival Operations or Festival Volunteers. It also has information on the student film competition. We have 10 high schools competing and 3 middle schools competing, and I've been told in the last week or so that some of the students are traveling from Texas and Michigan and from Long Beach, California to participate in that. It's a free event sponsored by one of our local marine sanctuaries. So the website is definitely the place to go and to learn more about everything that's happening in the festival. It gets updated every day with new filmmakers who are attending, new tidbits of information, and whatever the latest and greatest exciting thing that's happening with the festival.
Well, that's great to hear, and I know that those at home should definitely go to the website to check it out. We will be posting that link, but for those who just need to do a Google search, San Francisco International Ocean Film Festival should take you right there. For now, let's go directly to the filmmakers that are participating in this awesome event. Our first guest is Kristin, Olnes, filmmaker behind Steve Shirley's Shark Tagger. welcome to the Hangout, and thank you so much for coming. I want to, I believe this is your first Hangout. Is that correct?
It is, Andrew, and thanks for inviting me.
No problem. Thanks for joining. Can you tell us a little bit about Steve Shirley, Shark Tagger? We heard that this was your first film, actually.
Yes, it is, and well, Steve is a shark tagger in the San Francisco Bay, and when you take a look at the bay next to the San Francisco city, most people don't realize that there's, as far as I know, 5 species of shark in there. And Steve's out there with volunteers tagging sharks and releasing them as part of a long-term study in partnership with the Monterey Bay Aquarium.
Huh. So, can you tell us a little bit about the filmmaking process and a little bit more about, what was involved?
Well, basically, I had interview questions and filmed Steve in 4 different locations. The first one being out on the boat, and the second in his home, in his basement and office, and the third out at Ocean Middle Shore Harbor. And to give you an idea, when I've got that camera in my hand, I'm a crew and run, so I'm responsible for a lot of things. I have to keep track of what Steve was saying and whether it sounded convincing and compelling, and I had to look at the lighting and position myself in relation to him and move in to bring more dramatic element or whatever. It was just really a lot to keep track of at once and very exciting. I loved it.
Are there any particular people or events that were especially inspirational for you?
Well, I'm a swimmer, but I'm not necessarily a boat person, so I've lived in the Bay Area for 27 years, and I've never been out on the San Francisco Bay at the crack of dawn.
Really?
And heading out there in that boat with a crew of men, and I was the only woman with a brand new camera, and the dawn was rising, and it was so exciting and beautiful, and then catching that fish and releasing it, it was just really, that tagging trip was probably the most memorable part of making this film.
So I've been showing a couple of shots from your film and from your highlights. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about this guy right here.
Yes, that is a 7-gill shark, and Steve's caught them as large as 350 pounds, and I wasn't sure what size fish they would catch that day. I went out there, and so you never know, and they're able on that boat to take data and record information and then tag a shark no matter what size it is, so that's what I know.
From what I see, there's some really fantastic shots, there's some really interesting stories, and I look forward to checking out your film at the film festival. Before I move on to the next filmmaker, any advice you can give to first-time filmmakers out there?
Well, I'm new compared to a lot of the other filmmakers in this hangout, but basically, focus on your story, and don't be afraid to, do a lot of research and figure something out on your own. That's what I did, and seek feedback from people who have experience and get a lot of input about what you're doing as you go.
All right, well, DIY, and don't forget to ask questions. I think that's a great lesson for all of us. I'd like to next throw it over to Elise Hugus. You're Undercurrent Productions. You made this excellent film. Welcome to the Hangout, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Your film highlights the issue of wastewater pollution in Cape Cod that is affecting marine life, especially the shellfish industry. Can you tell us how you became aware of this issue and what you hope viewers will take away from your film?
Sure. I came to understand a little bit more about this issue because it is a very current environmental issue on Cape Cod, primarily because we're mostly on septic systems here, as opposed to most places that tend to be on sewers. And that's an issue on Cape Cod, especially because of our sandy soil. So wastewater travels really quickly through the ground, and it's started to accumulate as we've developed over the past 50 years especially. But I became aware of it as a reporter for a local newspaper, and since I've transitioned into filmmaking full-time, it kind of was a logical extension of some of the things I covered as a journalist.
Oh, fantastic. You know, speaking of journalism, not just in the word aspect, but there's also great photographic and cinematography. Wow, the words just aren't coming right now. Let me just show you some photos, and I would love to get your take on some of these amazing, amazing images. So what am I looking at right here?
So first of all, I just want to shout out to our cinematographer, Daniel Kojanu, who shot all the scenes in this film. That is actually about a year ago, last February or March, sunrise over one of the bays. That's one of the more polluted bays in Mashpee, which is a town on Cape Cod, which is primarily it's been a tribal lands for most of the history of Cape Cod. And that is a woman manager of an oyster farm heading out onto her farm, which is underwater.
Wow. Well, it's a very striking image, and it's a very beautiful image. And once I get the next images up, I'll throw it back to you. But while I still got you on here, how is this issue of wastewater pollution, how is it actually affecting the coastal communities? And you mentioned tribes. These tribes depend on these important resources, not just for money, but for subsistence, correct?
Absolutely. One of the reasons why we decided to focus on the Wampanoag tribe is the fact that, we could all be relying on the local fisheries for our food needs. But they, have traditionally been doing that, and the fact that overdevelopment has kind of encroached on their tribal fishing grounds, and pollution has harmed those fisheries. I think it's something for us all to be aware of. I don't know how many people are familiar with Cape Cod in this hangout, but one of the things that comes to mind are fish, shellfish, clean water. Those are things that we're all connected to, and so one of the reasons we wanted to make this film is to let people know how connected we all are, whether it's washing our clothes or flushing the toilet, we're all connected to those resources.
I'm showing one person here in particular. Can you tell me a little bit about this individual?
Sure. That's John Perry. He's a quahog shell fisherman. Quahogs are a kind of clam that are the word is a Wampanoag word, actually. He grew up in the area, and he's one of the kind of examples of how shell fishermen can do well for themselves, or used to be able to. He's got a nice waterfront home really close to where the picture is taken, and he was telling us about the decline that he has witnessed in the past say 30 years. So he used to be able to make a great living, and now it's just he does it for fun more than anything.
And what am I looking at here?
So that's actually the same woman that you saw in the sunrise photo. It's just a little bit after sunrise. And this is an example of aquaculture, oyster aquaculture. It's basically what our film is about is how even though the wild shell fisheries have declined, people are turning to aquaculture. So it's basically that kind of cage system that you see her lifting there as a way to grow oysters, just like you would on a regular farm. You seed them and grow them and kind of help them out as they go along. And one of the actual side benefits of that is not only you're restoring a fishery, but the oysters actually filtering the water as they grow. They feed on the algae that grows in the presence of the harmless nutrients that are in wastewater.
Well, I got to say that this photo is very striking, amazingly well composed, and if it's any indication of the film itself, I definitely need to see this just for the cinematography. While I still have you on here, this film has a really great conservation message, from what I hear. What are some everyday actions that people can take to reduce their impact, especially on their coastal communities?
That's a great question. We get it a lot whenever we've shown this. I'm going to take a note from a continuing project that we've been working on which addresses that a little bit more. I've talked with scientists who say everything from, maybe having more of a vegetarian diet, reducing the amount of protein or nitrogen in your system that you're ending up wasting, will do a lot to reduce the impacts downstream. But on another level, you can think about when we talk about conserving land and having buffers around our water bodies. That's not a joke. The natural systems are there, and they exist to kind of protect our water systems. We need to do what we can to reduce our impact and our footprint. So, everything from just looking at your own footprint to conserving resources in your community. Those are all things and great ways to get involved. One other thing is eating local shellfish and fish. Whether you're in California or on the East Coast, that's a great way to kind of help the fishermen and especially those that are doing sustainable aquaculture.
Sustainable local aquaculture, great message, really fantastic ideas in regards to limiting our own impact on a local level. Next, my guest made a really fantastic film about something that's a bit of a larger issue, the gyre system. I would love to throw it over to J.J. Kelley, National Geographic filmmaker. Can you tell us a little bit about your, well, first of all, actually, let me not be rude and welcome you to the actual Hangout. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about gyre and your film?
Yeah, absolutely. So gyres we've been hearing about over the last couple of years as these spinning collectors of garbage in the oceans. And it's kind of this nebulous idea of what is all this trash that's out there floating. We know that plastic is buoyant and a lot of it does float. Where does it stay there? Where does it move? So what we look at in this film is, because the way that the oceans spin and move, a lot of this plastic is making its way up to remote parts of the world, like Alaska. And you have the Aleutian chain that basically acts as a net, absorbing and catching all this garbage onto its beaches. And then you have the incredible amount of wildlife that's passing through that area, consuming this garbage, filling up with so much garbage that's, in some cases, especially with birds that migrate, they have so much garbage in their stomach that they can't eat and they die. So we went up to remote parts of Alaska and found beaches where maybe a person lives, maybe nobody else lives, and we found garbage that was up to your knees or higher.
I'm taking a look at some of the photos, and yeah, there's some, I'm seeing drift net, I'm seeing plastic, I'm seeing all sorts of stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in these images?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, okay, you can go look at a problem, and that's one thing. But what I find really interesting about, conservation and filmmaking is, what's the story there? And what was interesting about this project is there was a group of artists from all around the world that were coming to Alaska, and they were going to go to these beaches they'd never been to before. They'd never lived on a boat before. They'd never been seasick before. They've never seen a brown bear up close before. And they were going to go to these beaches, collect garbage, and make art exhibits that would travel around the country. And this exhibit opened in Anchorage initially, and now it's moving to Atlanta next.
And there's one of those bears that you were mentioning. I noticed that Kip Evans is on a lot of the credits for these photos. Was he involved directly in the project?
Yes. Kip is an incredible photographer and filmmaker, and he has ties to National Geographic as well. He lives in your area, and he was on the boat with us. And he did a number of, he did all the photographs and helped us with some of the video as well.
We've had Kip on the symposium a couple of times, and his images are just really fantastic. What really strikes me about your project is that, as you mentioned, it's not just drawing awareness to the problem, but it's also trying to make something not necessarily positive, but striking and beautiful from this problem. Can you speak a little bit more about the art aspect of this?
Yeah, so I think it's really easy to see a problem in life and just feel bad about it. And it's those rare individuals that take a turn and they do something about it. And here was a group of artists that basically recognized there was a problem. They were very sensitive about the wildlife that was being killed, and they wanted to do something. and their outlet was through art. And you have artists that are up there taking photographs of the art, of the garbage, and showing it as it is. But just because of the nature of plastic and how when it spends time out in the ocean, it takes on these interesting hues. And because of the engineering that goes behind it, I mean, a Coca-Cola bottle on a pristine beach in Alaska is an ugly thing to see because it's ruining, depending on how you look at it, because it's ruining that pristine landscape. But a lot of marketing research went into developing that plastic in the first place. So it is its own work of art. And the juxtaposition of that in the natural world was really appealing to a number of these artists.
That's very interesting, a very interesting perspective in regards to the object itself as a piece of art and trying to incorporate that into a larger message. Can you speak to the relationship between your work and National Geographic, especially in regards to this film?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been with National Geographic for about 7 years now, and this film is 22 minutes long, and it ran in the iPad edition of National Geographic magazine last November. So they recognized this as a problem, and because more and more media is moving to an online outlet, they want to have films that they can incorporate in their magazine. So you're reading the magazine on the iPad, and this is basically a video article for them.
Wow. No, I mean, obviously you're on a online aspect currently, trying to draw awareness to both your film and the issues, so I can definitely resoundingly say I totally agree with the efforts that Nat Geo is doing in that realm. Really quickly, while I still have you on, you're quite an adventurer yourself. Looking at your background, you're an Appalachian Trail through hiker. You've biked across Alaska. You've kayaked from Alaska to Seattle, which is mind-boggling to me personally, and traveled the length of the River Ganges, and you're an Emmy-nominated filmmaker. How do you even find time for filmmaking?
Thank you. That's really nice, Andrew. It's kind of been my passion. So going on these adventures and spending a lot of time in the natural world is how I grew to love and adore that space. And eventually you can go on all these trips and have an incredible time and spend months and months out in the wilderness. But when you start to see the impact that we have, it's unmistakable that we are changing the planet. And I feel like you can do these adventure films for a while, but then you're kind of eventually ignoring the bigger issue here, and that is that we are part of the natural world and we are having a negative impact on it across the board.
Yeah, that's a heavy message to say. Hopefully there's a way to incorporate both the excitement, the beauty, and the awareness of our impact on the actual issues. Really excited to see your work at the festival. And again, thank you so much for being on our Hangout today. I'm going to move on to our next participant, our next guest, Brian Cole, who's actually coming to us from Cliff Bar in regards to a short film, which is titled Into the Mind of Greg Long. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to welcome you and thank you again so much for being a part of our Hangout.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
Can you tell me a little bit about how Cliff Bar actually became involved in a film project?
Sure, yeah. So in my role at Cliff, I work specifically with a handful of the sports that we participate in. So I do sports marketing specifically in surf and ski and snowboard and climbing and mountain biking in the outdoor space. And through that, I get to also be the team manager and bring on a number of elite professional level athletes that we get to work with, Greg Long being one of them. So Greg and I forged a personal relationship a handful of years ago, and since then Greg has come on as a member of Team Cliff Bar and is an ambassador for us out in the field and takes our products obviously with him wherever he travels all around the world. So through our conversations, starting to talk about different ways that we could work together, Greg had mentioned in particular that he had some just incredible footage from his past experiences around the world, as well as some more recent incidences in his life that brought him to really wanting to put some of that content out and share it with a larger audience. So thereby I was introduced to Patrick Trebs, who is the talented filmmaker who lives down in Santa Cruz and actually directed and created the film, and was able to capture so much of what goes on for Greg in terms of his preparation and his mental process as it relates specifically to surfing some of the largest waves in the world.
Well, that sounds fantastic. What are some lessons that are imparted in the film?
You know, I think there's a number of lessons in it. What I like in particular about the piece is Greg speaks in a way that we can all relate to him and to just a process in life. You know, one of the primary lessons that comes through, which is one of the more obvious ones, is the ways in which Greg is prepared for surfing these incredible waves. And we don't often see that through a lot of the content that's produced. And Cliff Bar is a company that has multiple bottom lines and, you know, likes to stay connected to our values throughout. Really wanted to focus on both the physical and the mental preparation that go into a pursuit such as big wave surfing. But as you get a little bit deeper into the piece, you start to hear a little bit more from Greg specifically about things like fear and how he embraces fear and or sort of addresses that in his life. He also talks a lot about, you know, what we all know and, you know, sort of resonates with the Cliff story as well, which is the journey. You know, no matter what the experience, as he puts it, be it positive or negative, these are all just sort of stepping stones onto becoming a better human in this world and learning and growing and relating to, you know, our environments around us. And I think there's a real human element to Greg, which comes through in particular in this piece as he just sort of opens up and shares what his process is like.
Well, I gotta say that's really inspirational just from the hearsay. I'm gonna have to see it, you know, in person, especially after showing some of those stills while you're chatting. What has been?
Yeah, we look forward to sharing it for sure.
What has been your biggest takeaway from the experience of working with a surfer, working on ocean issues from the perspective of Cliff Bar?
Yeah, you know, partially through my work at Cliff, I get to align with a lot of my own personal values as well, which relates specifically to sustainability and environmentalism and, you know, focusing on just working with good people in the world. And that really comes through with Greg. And a lot of the projects we try to do, we're not just, you know, especially when we're looking for athletes to work with, for example, or partners, we're not just looking for those who are the best in the world at what they do, but also for people who are particularly interested in their communities and in their environment and in actually, you know, engaging with the world in a much broader sense. So Greg is absolutely one of those athletes. One of his partnerships is with Sustainable Surf. So that's a nonprofit organization that's working with surf athletes in particular to start using boards that are made out of recycled foam and more sustainable glues and things that will have a lesser impact on the environment. But then also Greg you know, he works with a number of, you know, philanthropic groups, and you know, we at Cliff also work with folks that, you know, one of our sort of mantras is protecting the places we play. So not only, obviously we're in recreation and a performance nutrition company, but making sure that when we go out into these wild places, we're not only thinking about what we're out there to do in that moment, but how we can also preserve and protect these places for future generations so that others continue to enjoy this. And obviously that resonates well with the Ocean Film Festivals also.
Well, that really resonates with me personally, and I gotta say I'm really glad to hear it. One last question: Are you a surfer or get into the water at all? Has this film inspired you to take a dive?
Absolutely, yeah. I am a surfer and have been for a handful of years here, and that's one of the beautiful things about the role I play, which is that in getting to work with surfers and climbers and mountain bikers and skiers and snowboarders, I get to get out there with them, and that's part of my job. So. As much as I enjoy it on the personal level, it's a way that my soul gets fed when I come to work every day as well.
Well, I gotta say we should all be so lucky and to have that ability. I want to thank you again for being a part of this hangout, and we're gonna circle back to everybody once we get through all of the guests for a group discussion. My next guest actually comes from Mexico and has worked on a film I believe called Mexico. Pelagico. Can you, Giro, can you actually help me with the pronunciation of that, because obviously I'm completely butchering it?
Sure. It's Mexico Pelágico in Spanish. If you were to translate it to English, it's Pelagic Mexico. That's the pronunciation.
Gracias por todo. So you are a filmmaker, obviously, and you have 5 years experience in filming and producing underwater videos, but this is your first formal production. How does it feel to have completed your first formal production and not only have it finished, but also in the running in the film festival?
It's extremely exciting. I just want to make a clarification that I am not a filmmaker. I mean, this is a project that has put me in a position where I might call myself a filmmaker, but to be honest, the filmmaking I was doing prior to completing this project was during the weekends, during free time, spare time that I had. So this is, as you were mentioning, my first formal production, and it has been an extremely roller coaster ride. We were always working on a very tight budget. We had very little to work with, but we're just extremely happy that what we have, we were able to create something that people value and are appreciated, not only in Mexico, but other parts of the world, and we're extremely happy for that.
So what was the transition like from kind of a, I guess you would say, amateur hobbyist filmmaker to what we see at the film festival today?
I think in large part it was just an input of post-production costs. We had the story, we had the footage, we had all of that, but we were lacking that money to properly put it all together and present it in a way that was that had enough quality that people saw it as a serious production. So I think in the end, there's many people like me that have stories, that have amazing footage, that have amazing stories to tell, and sometimes it's just a matter of getting the actual money for the post-production to put it all together in something that's worth watching.
What can your film actually teach us about ocean conservation?
I think our main thesis throughout the film is that ocean conservation can be done in through ecotourism, and we start out exploring the idea, seeing if ecotourism is actually a good solution, because when you have too much tourism or a certain type of tourism, tourism isn't perfect for conservation. But our main thesis is exploring if in Mexico shark diving can be used as a conservation tool to stop overfishing, especially because you give the fishermen higher income and a better way of living, safer and much more economically viable. And so this is our main thesis, and we explore it by looking at many examples in Mexico where it has worked, where it hasn't worked, when it has been a success, and what are the things that make it a success, and what are the things we have to stay away from that are harmful to conservation when you put tourism in the equation.
I was going to try to show a little bit of the trailer of your film through this Hangout, but for some reason the tech's not really letting me. I want to let everybody at home know that you have to see the trailer for this. It is absolutely beautiful. You got these amazing aerial shots and underwater shots, and for somebody who started off as a amateur hobbyist, I got to say this is a really fantastic production. So really looking forward to see the full thing. And are you going to be at the film festival in San Francisco?
Yes, I'm definitely going to be there. I just have to get organized with my flights, but I'll be there for sure.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to meeting you in person, and looking forward to having as many people as possible see this incredible film. Next up, I'd like to introduce a filmmaker from Australia who has been working on a number of awesome projects, including one that has been sweeping all these different awards, different areas, and it just has this awesome message. Gisela, I'd love for you to say hi to all the people at home, and welcome to the Hangout.
Hi Andrew, hi everybody in the Hangout. Great to be here, live from Australia, and yes, it's great to meet you all out there.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your early morning to join this Hangout. In the last decade, your international co-productions of Sea of Snakes, Tarantula, Cuttlefish, something that's a personal favorite of mine, obviously, Lizard Kings, and Project Manta have received over 60 international film awards, including 2 nominations and 1 Panda at the Oscars of Wildlife Filmmaking, the Wild Screen Festival in the UK. First of all, how does it feel to be such a successfully well-renowned filmmaker working on things that you're obviously passionate about?
It obviously feels great to have that kind of feedback, but I don't think I feel any other than any of my colleagues on the panel. You fight for every project, you never know when the next one comes up, funding remains difficult. So that doesn't change. What is fantastic is to see the stories travel and to see the films getting out there. So, I mean, that's why we make them, to have them out there, and that's obviously happening once they travel to festivals and get recognition. So that's wonderful.
Well, you know, I've got to say that I've only seen a portion of your films, but cuttlefish was... I'm a big cephalopod fan, and cuttlefish are one of my favorite animals, and seeing that film was just phenomenal and ridiculously awesome. So just personally, thank you for making that. But I've got to say, I've got to ask for those who are at home, budding filmmakers and people who are kind of interested in these types of projects, what type of advice do you give to somebody who is really interested in, say, a particular subject matter, a particular creature, but isn't quite sure about the next steps?
Well, first of all, I think if you take an idea anywhere, you have to have some idea of the story. It's great to be fascinated by cuttlefish, for example, and they're one of my favorites. They're just to die for. But you've got to have some kind of a story. It's not enough to just say, there's this awesome animal and we've got to do that, because every animal on the planet has basically been featured in some kind of blue-chip way, traditional behavioral stuff. So I think you need to find a story. You need to find people who work with this animal. You need to find good characters. You need to bring the story alive. And if you have never done anything like this, it's probably most advisable to find somebody who has and try to partner up with another producer or a production company who sort of work in your field. So given the tools of the internet we have today, it's actually not that hard to find people who've been working in the field and just go out and, stalk them with your idea. Try to get some grabs, even if it's on the iPhone or on the GoPro, whatever it is. Put something together and try to find people you can partner with.
Well, speaking of stories, finding a story around an animal and finding people who work with those, one of your films, which is up for an award or a couple of awards at the International Ocean Film Festival, is Shark Girl. Can you tell us a little bit about that film and the process with that?
Yes, it's funny. We never thought we would do a film on sharks because there's so many shark films out there, and it's quite an explosive kind of field, and an overly hyped field as well. But then we ran into Madison, who's the key character of the film, and there is something special about Maddie. She's with 14, she decided to dedicate her life to sharks, and she's done all kinds of things to make this happen. She left school, went into homeschooling, and she's out there educating or telling the public about sharks, and she's a very engaging character. So, I mean, Madison could have probably worked on sea snakes, and we would have done, the Snake Girl film. She was just a really strong character. So in this way, the story started from her. And I think what's special about this film is it's a very personal story, but it talks about a very big topic, and the topic is sharks. And not just in Australia, but also worldwide, and what's happening. So, and I think if you have a strong character, people will go with the story and listen what's happening out there. And yes, with Madison, we could explore the wider picture of shark trading, and the ugly and the beautiful sides of it, really. So it came from a strong character in that case.
Well, it's really great to see this film and the character, as you mentioned, Maddie, getting so much attention and so much interest. Can you speak a little bit to what you hope are the positive effects of the attention this film is getting?
Yes, on many screenings we had, most people are scared of sharks. There's just no doubt about that. And here in Australia, I think it's even worse than, say, for example, in the States. Like in Florida, you probably have very similar species to what we have here on the Great Barrier Reef or the east and west coast of Australia. But people still go into the water without too much fuss. Here in Australia, it's different. People, I think, lots of people are very aware of sharks and probably overestimate the danger of, you know, being attacked the moment you put your toe into the water. So what happened on many screenings is that people are probably still scared of sharks that want, you know, change within watching one film, but they're willing to look into it, and there's some kind of awe about these animals. So if we get away from, if we come away from a film that actually triggers some review or some, you know, thinking about where your fear is coming from and whether that's really all that valid, if you get people to think about something, I think we've made a huge step. Another thing is, one of the big topics in the film is the shark trade and the shark meat trade, and it's been proven all over again, and it's actually last week new studies came out again, shark meat can be highly toxic. In fact, to a point where if you pick the wrong piece of shark steak and you're pregnant, you could even have an abortion. It's due to this sad state of our oceans and the high mercury levels in the oceans, and sharks being long-lived predators, eating everything that's around and accumulating these levels. They're definitely not a species you should have on your plate, whether you love sharks or not. So that's another thing, appealing to people on different levels and say, hey, look, this is the situation. Think about what comes with the package and maybe rethink what you're doing.
Well, it's really great that you have put together this awesome film that not only gets the conversation started, but also, you know, has people thinking. And that's actually a great segue into the first group discussion question, which is, you know, the crossover of film and conservation, like how film actually impacts and influences conservation, not just from the, you know, individual side, but also from the larger, you know, policy decision, larger group activity situation, even behavior modification. I'd love to, since nobody seems to really be volunteering for answering this quick question, I'm going to just drop it on somebody. Elise, I'd love to hear your perspective on where this crossover lies and some, you know, good examples in regards to that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think we have a very important role to play in that regard. I can only speak to The Watershed, our film. We worked with a nonprofit environmental organization actually to fund it, and that was useful, I think, for both our purposes. We got the film made, and they got an outreach tool, which helps with their conservation efforts. So that, I think, is really important. You know, they're going to reach with the film some people that probably won't go to their meetings or won't become a member, but are going to think about the next policy decision and maybe think a little bit differently about it.
Anna, I'm sure that you have a lot to say about this topic, being, you know, the director of the International Ocean Film Festival. Can you speak a little bit to your experiences and what you, what your perspective is on this?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that, you know, over the years, we have a lot of ticket holders and festival goers who continue to come back to see the films, and undoubtedly at every festival I have someone who comes up to me and say, I'll never forget that film that you showed last year or 2 years ago. It left such an impression on me. It changed the way I see things. I could go down the list of those types of films that we have, and that's why these films are so important and so impactful when it comes to conservation. One quick example is the Majestic plastic bag. It was the journey of a plastic bag from a downtown urban setting and how it ended up in the ocean. And it really had an impact on behavior modification and not using single-use plastic bags. And I think people remember those films, they remember the messages from the films, and then they in turn go back and change their ways. And that's just one simple example, but I think all of these films do have a message of conservation, and they do end up having an impact, whether it's behavior modification or legislative or policy, and that's what people are coming to learn more about. What can I do to become a better ocean steward? What can I do to help change policy or change my behavior or tell my neighbor what to do or how to do something differently? And so that's what's so meaningful about these films, and that's why we enjoy hosting and having this film festival.
The Majestic Plastic Bag, was that the one that was narrated by Jeremy Irons?
Yes, that's the one.
That
yeah.
was one thing that was really fantastic about that short film in itself was not only did it create this awesome, almost like a parody of a mockumentary about the life of this inanimate object, but it added humor into it too with here we see the plastic bag's most fearsome enemy, the teacup Yorkshire Terrier, and Jeremy Irons' voice in the background. It's just a great, fantastic, memorable film. I suggest everybody watching see it. But again, it's a short film, but through humor and through showing this actual life cycle was very, very impactful. JJ, I'd love to get your perspective, since we are on the topic of plastics, about film and conservation, where the two overlap, and how one can actually, create the conversation for the other.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I mean, I think it comes down to two things when you make a film that you want to have a larger impact in conservation. It's about the content. Any film is about the content, but it's also about the audience. So I think a lot of films about an issue can feel like medicine. Like, oh, I'm going to take this documentary, like fiber, I'm going to feel good tomorrow. It might not be fun going down, but gosh darn it, it's good for me. That doesn't have to be the case with documentary. It can be engaging, it can be exciting, it can be compelling, and it should be. I think that's one thing. And that's the content. It should pull you along. It should be an actual story. It shouldn't just be about the issue. And the other is about the audience. Who's seeing this? So, this film that we did is about plastic. The previous film that we did was about elephant ivory. And we were able to get that in front of CITES, in front of Congress. Now ivory is banned in many states in the United States. They've done crushes in China, they've done crushes in the Philippines, they've destroyed ivory in Africa, and it's about creating this awareness and getting it into the hands of policymakers and make them accountable for the message that you're preaching. So it is multifaceted, but I think it's important that you have a good story that people are going to talk about, that people want to watch, and then get that story in front of people that can actually make a difference. Because we can make a difference, in our own lives, and that's something. But when you have policy change across the board, when you make it easier for people, or when you coerce people into making this decision, then you're going to see a large-scale change.
Well, here's hoping that any film that is inspirational is not just force-fed as medicine. I really love your points in regards to making sure that it's something tasteful and tasty to swallow, so to speak, that actually has that resonancy that's beyond just the immediate impact, but actually lasts with you for a very long time. I would love to hear Brian's perspective, as coming from a company that is funding a film project. I would love to hear your opinion in regards to how you see films as inspiring conservation. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but I would love to hear a little bit more in-depth perspective.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think one, it's I don't want to say an unlikely audience, but in talking to athletes and adventurers in particular, that opportunity to tie both environmental messaging with the inspiration of getting outside is one that we see not only as an opportunity, but one that's in line with who we are as an organization as well. We work with
Hello?
One of the themes that comes through a lot of our film jewels that we work with in particular, adventuring with the purpose. I mentioned that earlier, but there's a platform of the outdoor space to bring conservation-minded messages. We've been working closely with Greg to actually align scientific researchers who are looking for data to be collected from oftentimes obscure parts of the world and connecting them with athletes and individuals to these places, so that not only when an athlete reaches, for example, 20,000 feet and plans to snowboard down a Himalayan peak, they might also be able to collect a water sample that will help in a climatology study that's being done by a researcher in Italy. So bringing these, normally disconnected groups together to actually work together in a way that they, a particular piece with Jeremy Jones, another athlete we work with, called Adventure with a Purpose, a Higher Calling, where he literally did just that, brought back some water and snow samples to look at the, to look at the amount of water in the snowpack and the glacier melt that would thereby become the water table and the drinking water for all of the people of Nepal and living in those remote regions. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking to, and also, there are other opportunities to just talk to a traditionally maybe action sports-oriented audience and bring a conservation-minded message through a platform that and a language that they actually understand, versus trying to take them to the pure science side.
Totally understood. Not everybody can speak science, and it's really great to see those different partners working in collaboration, even if one's a extreme sports person and others a climatologist. Kristin, I'd love to get your perspective in regards to this question, where the crossover is between conservation and film.
Well, I believe that film is a
Kristin? Hold on for one sec. For some reason, I can't hear you. Can you try now?
Yes.
There you go.
Hi. You got it? All right.
Yeah.
I think that film is a really powerful interpretational tool, and I've been using it for years in homeschooling my 3 children, in fact, and the main reason is because stories are much more memorable than facts, and you have this powerful ability through images, which by and large most of the population is attracted to nowadays. Everything is visual. And then you combine that with the audio and the enriched environment, and it's just, like JJ said, it's just a memorable thing. But the thing is that what also makes it unique is that nowadays, and being an independent filmmaker, you've got this ability to share your movie in a way that you never had in the past. So through the social media outlets, you're able to get your film out and share it with other people, and they're sharing it, and so it's exponential in terms of the message.
Well, that's a really great point, especially in regards to the social media aspect, because it's not only a tool to broadcast, but you can even get an interactive perspective where, say through things like a Google Hangout or things like a informational infographic that's interactive, you can express and have a dialogue with your audience in a different way than just having somebody sit down and watch the film and hopefully be impacted. I'm a big proponent of trying to get the discussion going through new technology and new social means, so thank you so much for bringing up that topic. On this same line of the crossover between film and conservation, I'd love to throw it back to Gisela, who's I know that you have an awesome perspective in regards to this based off of what you touched on when you were talking earlier, but if you could continue on that, I'd really appreciate it.
Yes, as we just discussed, there's so many platforms films can be used. Of course, they might be restricted to, depending on what TV rights are out there, and it's somehow restricting full exposure on the internet. But people we work with use the films. There's community screenings. There's they go out to schools. There's all kinds of things where you can bring these films. And I think, yes, if we manage to get people thinking about whatever the topic is, whatever the message is, I think then you are a huge step ahead. I don't think we should ever really tell people what to do. That's something people should still decide for themselves, but give them the range, give them the option, have a discussion. And that's, I think, what it's all about. Rethink.
That's a very interesting perspective of giving your audience a range of options and letting them decide for themselves instead of just hitting them over the head with this is what you have to do. The way you describe it, it seems a lot more cooperative than instructive, if that makes sense.
Yes. I don't think people want to be preached to, and that comes back to JJ earlier too. We have to engage, we have to entertain. There's nothing wrong with that. If you engage, you get people coming into the story. So tell it interestingly, don't preach, try to be fair the way you show it, and if you show it strongly enough, I'm pretty sure that decisions will go in a way that would help the cause.
That's a great message for not only people in the film industry, but just conservation overall. Approach it in an interactive and collaborative mood, not just a preaching mood. Gio, I'd love to get your perspective on this as well.
Yeah, I think conservation is all about change, and people usually change when they face a problem or when they actually are in front of an issue, and that's when the change happens. And the powerful thing about combining conservation and film is that film you have a lot more exposure, and through film you also, as a filmmaker, you are almost obligated to compress sometimes very complicated, sometimes very sensible information and compress it in a tight format and present it to a large audience. And hopefully when you present it, you actually create that change. And it might not be a change that comes out when somebody actually is living the moment or the problem, but it's definitely going to help make people make people go to the problem or to the solution. So absolutely, I agree with most of what everyone has saying, that it creates conversation and everything, but I think the most important thing is that you are incentivizing change through a medium that has high viewership.
I think that's a really excellent point, especially in regards to trying to compress these really ridiculously complex actions, thoughts, or processes into something that's short and digestible. Just from personal experience, trying to take all these hangouts and put them into a little highlight reel, I always feel like I'm editing out so much of an excellent conversation. And on that topic, we are at the last couple of minutes of our hangout, so I want to give the opportunity for all of my participants to have kind of a final say. And I'd love for Kristin to lead us off, since you've been a really excellent voice so far. I'd love for you to start off our final thoughts.
Well, I'd like to invite people to the screening on Monday, March 2nd at the Cowell Theater at Fort Mason in San Francisco, and I'm just basically honored to be part of this whole festival, because the fact that so many people from all over the world are involved here, and it contains so many strong conservation messages as well as entertainment, just means that people are going to have a lot of fun.
Well, I know that I'm definitely going to try to take you up on that offer of checking out the screening, and I know that based off of the clips that I've seen so far, it just definitely seems like a very beautiful and very inspirational series of films that are involved this year. So here's hoping that this message gets out to a large berth of audiences and everybody gets to see your awesome film. Jiro, I'd love to have you up next with your final thoughts.
I just wanted to thank everyone in this panel and anybody who's watching for taking the time. Personally, I've been really interested in hearing everyone's thoughts, so thank you for your thoughts. And I'm very excited and happy to see you all in person in just a couple of weeks. It'll be very fun, and I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's coming up quick, and thank you for your thoughts. JJ, you're up next. I'd love to hear your perspective on your final thoughts for this hangout.
Thanks, Andrew. I hope folks are able to make it out. We as filmmakers make so much of our work, and then it's broadcast on the internet or on television, and it's rare that we get a chance to actually have a dialogue with the audiences and other filmmakers. And film festivals are a rare opportunity to do that. And this one has an incredible group of folks coming together, a beautiful setting, and really interesting and thought-provoking topics that actually have a difference to make change and an opportunity to share thoughts and really, honestly, to make this planet a better place. So I encourage you to come out and see every film that these filmmakers presented today. Look forward to meeting you guys in person.
You know, JJ, if you wanted like more people to contact you directly, you could always put your email directly at the end of the credits. You know, come talk to me. But anyway, next up, I'd love to hear Gisella's last thoughts on the Hangout.
Yes, as JJ said, it's very rare that we can interact directly. Festival's a fantastic platform. The San Francisco International Ocean Festival, has a great reputation out there. So I think it's a fantastic way of getting together, talking ocean and everything that's in there. And I'm very sorry I won't be able to make it, but we hope one of our team will be. And I'll follow closely on the internet. So have a fantastic festival, everyone.
Yeah, you too. And sorry that you won't be able to make it. Hopefully, sometime in the future.
Yes.
Elise, I'd love to get your final thoughts on this.
Thanks. I think one of the greatest things about film festivals, and particularly a ocean film festival, is the fact that we realize all our connections around the world. Just doing this hangout has been an example of that, and pardon me, the fact that the ocean connects us all. I think it speaks to so many different aspects of the way we can enjoy, the way we can conserve, the way we can live on and from the ocean. It's really important for us to all make those connections, whether you're an audience or a filmmaker, and kind of learn and grow from that. So I appreciate this opportunity, and looking forward to meeting filmmakers and the audiences that come out in a couple of weeks.
All right. I hope to meet you in person as well, and really hope that this message gets broadcast all throughout the world and beyond. Brian, your final thoughts?
Yeah, just such a treat to sit here with you all today, and I really look forward to seeing each of your films for sure at the Film Fest. Assuming that there is not a major swell coming in, I did have a chance to speak with Greg Long as well, and our hope is that he will be able to join us on Friday the 27th for the Surf Film Block, and hopefully do a bit of Q&A around the film itself. So that would be great, and if not, most certainly Patrick, the director of the film, will be there as well. So look forward to meeting some of you there and seeing your work, and thanks again for the time.
Well, thanks for joining us, and really hope to get to see you at the festival. Anna, I'd love for you to kind of wrap us up on this and give us your final thoughts on the whole hangout and the whole festival. Oh.
There we go. Thank you. I want to say thank you, Andrew, for organizing this and the online Ocean Symposium for having us. And thank you, all of you, for participating. I think this is the largest number of participants we've had on a Google Hangout for the film festival. So thank you for making the time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts about your films. And I think my takeaway here is that these films are about change, and the festival is about creating opportunities for people to come together, to continue the dialogue, to talk about the stories that are being brought forward through the films. And there's lots of fun, lots of parties, lots of great times for people to get together and truly connect. And I would like to point out, I didn't mention it earlier, but we had over 145 submissions, and we've narrowed it down to 40 of the top award-winning independent films that focus on the ocean. So it's our pleasure and honor to feature those films. Thank you for everything that you do. And at this point, it's really about promoting it and getting the word out there and inviting people who may never have heard about the festival to come and experience this ability or this opportunity to connect. So follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and register on our website for our newsletter, and just help support the film festival by promoting it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for putting together an awesome film festival. I want to say thank you to all the participants to helping create this awesome, inspirational, informative, and beautiful hangout. I want to thank you, the viewers at home, for hanging out with us today. I hope to see all of you at the San Francisco International Ocean Film Festival for all the exciting events, films, talks, and just all around cool ocean times. Until then, don't forget to get underwater, and we'll see you at the next Online Ocean Symposium.
Thank you.